All right, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. I know it's been a hot minute since I've done one of these slow down Sundays. Let me get the slideshow up and running. I haven't had time to edit this lately because a couple of the campaigns that are going to be on this slideshow have either already been fulfilled or they've been closed for whatever reason. But I'll update it next week. I'm sorry. I have been spending the entire weekend trying to get the script for my the third issue of my comic book Next Evolution. The second issue has already been written, and Martin, he's working on the art for it as we speak. I believe he's working on page 16 right now. But yeah, I was busy getting that done. And then, of course, my boyfriend came over, and then I also spent some time reading Razor Fist's comic book, Ghost of the Badlands. And yeah, I think I'm going to be reviewing that on my blog, and I might even do a quick little review on here, try and, dip my toes into video essays. Sorry, my brain misfired for some reason. I really need to start making videos on here, but I do have one video idea in mind with your boy Zach's recent comments about how being a conservative should disqualify you from being a critic. I've watched half of his video so far, but I want to watch the full video first before I make my commentary, because I already have some thoughts about that statement. I think that's a very weird take to have, but I want to inform myself by watching the entire video first. So, look forward to that. So, last time we were here, we read the short story, The Phoenix on the Sword, and let's see how long this one is, because if this is going to be like... Oh, okay. The next one on the list, or in this book, is The Frost Giant's Daughter, and it looks like it's going to be a short one, so we might read another story after this. Yeah, it's a lot shorter than Phoenix on the Sword. What the heck? Though I have noticed with both the Conan stories and with the Solomon Kane book that I'm starting to read that Howard doesn't exactly have a set page that he tries to aim for. He just kind of goes with whatever page length he wants, which, I can respect that. Sometimes it's good to know when it's time to stop a story instead of trying to extend it for longer than it needs to be. I don't know, I'm one of those people where if a story calls for being over 800 pages, fine, whatever. But if it's something that can easily be told in 200 pages, then why extend it to 800 pages? I'm one of those people. I like getting to the point. Alright, from Robert E. Howard, Conan the Barbarian, The Frost Giant's Daughter. The clangor of the swords had died away. The shouting of the slaughter was hushed. Silence lay on the red-stained snow. The peak-pale sun that glittered so blindingly from the ice fields and the snow-covered plains struck sheens of silver from rent corselet and broken blade, where the dead lay as they had fallen. The nerveless hand yet gripped the broken hilt. Helmeted heads back-drawn in the death throes. Tilted red beards and golden beards grimly upward, as if in a last invocation to Ymir, the frost giant, god of a warrior race. Yeah, sorry if I am mispronouncing some of these names. Across the red drifts and mail-clad forms, two figures glared at each other. In that utter desolation, only they moved. The frost sky was over them, the white, illimitable plain around them, the dead men at their feet. Slowly through the corpses they came, as ghosts might come to a tryst through the shambles of a dead world. In the brooding silence they stood face to face. Both were tall men, built like tigers. Their shields were gone, their corselets battered and dinted. Blood dried on their mail. Their swords were stained red. Their horned helmets showed the marks of fierce strokes. One was beardless and black-maned. The locks and beard of the other were red as the blood on the sunlit snow. "Man," said he, "tell me your name, so that my brothers in Vanhelm may know who was the last of Wulfhere's band to fall before the sword of Heimdall." "Not in Vanhelm," growled the black-haired warrior, "but in Valhalla will you tell your brothers that you met Conan of Cimmeria. I cannot get that name down. Sorry, folks. Heimdall roared and leaped, and his sword flashed in deathly arc. Conan staggered, and his vision was filled with red sparks as the singing blade crashed on his helmet, shivering into bits of blue fire. But as he reeled, he thrust with all the power of his broad shoulders behind the humming blade. The sharp point tore through brass, scales, and bones and heart, and the red-haired warrior died at Conan's feet. The Cimmerian stood upright, trailing his sword, and a sudden sick weariness assailed him. The glare of the sun on the snow cut his eyes like a knife, and the sky seemed shrunken and strangely apart. He turned away from the trampled expanse where yellow-bearded warriors lay locked with red-haired slayers in the embrace of death. A few steps he took, and the glare of the snowfields was suddenly dimmed. A rushing wave of blindness engulfed him, and he sank down into the snow, supporting himself on one mailed arm, seeking to shake the blindness out of his eyes as a lion might shake his mane. A silvery laugh cut through his dizziness, and his sight cleared slowly. He looked up. There was a strangeness about all the landscape that he could not place or define, an unfamiliar tinge to earth and sky, but he did not think long of this. Before him, swaying like a sapling in the wind, stood a woman. Her body was like ivory to his dazed gaze, and save for a light veil of gossamer, she was naked as the day. Her slender bare feet were whiter than the snow they spurned. She laughed down at the bewildered warrior. Her laughter was sweeter than the rippling of silvery fountains, and poisonous with cruel mockery. "Who are you?" asked the Cimmerian. "Whence come you?" "What matter?" Her voice was more musical than a silver-stringed harp, but it was edged with cruelty. "Call up your men," said he, grasping his sword. "Yet though my strength fail me, they shall not take me alive. I see that you are of the Vanir." "Have I said so?" His gaze went again to her unruly locks, which at first glance he had thought to be red. Now he saw that they were neither red nor yellow, but a glorious compound of both colors. He gazed spellbound. Her hair was like elfin gold, The sun struck it so dazzlingly that he could scarcely bear to look upon it. Her eyes were likewise neither wholly blue nor wholly gray, but of shifting colors and dancing lights, and clouds of color that he could not define. Her full red lips smiled, and from her slender feet to the blinding crown of her billowing hair, her ivory body was as perfect as the dream of a god. Conan's pulse hammered in his temples. "Oh, crap! It's a hot girl talking to me! This is a trap!" "I cannot tell," said he, "whether you are of Vanaheim and mine enemy, or of Asgard and my friend. Far have I wandered, but a woman like you I have never seen. Your locks blind me with their brightness. Never have I... Oh, sorry. Never have I seen such hair, not even among the fairest daughters of the Aesir, but by Ymir. Who are you to swear by Ymir?" she mocked. "What know you of the gods of ice and snow? You who have come up from the south to adventure among an alien people." "By the dark gods of my own race," he cried in anger. "Though I am not of the golden-haired Aesir, none has been more forward in sword-play. This day I have seen 80 men fall, and I alone have survived the field where Wulfhere's ravers met the wolves of Bragi. Tell me, woman, have you seen the flash of mail out across the snow plains, or seen armed men move upon the ice?" "I have seen the hoarfrost glittering in the snow," she answered. "I have heard the wind whispering among the everlasting snows, glittering at the sun. I have seen whispering across the everlasting snows." He shook his head with a sigh. "Njord should have come up with us before the battle joined. I fear he and his fighting men have been ambushed. Wulfhere and his warriors lie dead. I had thought that there was no village within many leagues of this spot, for the war carried us far, but you cannot have come a great distance over these snows, naked as you are. Lead me to your tribe, if you are Asgard, for I am faint with blows and the weariness of strife." "My village is further than you can walk, Conan of Cimmeria," she laughed. Spreading her arms wide, she swayed before him, her golden head lolling sensuously, her scintillant eyes half shadowed beneath their long, sullen lashes. "Am I not beautiful, O man?" "Like dawn running naked on the snow," he muttered, his eyes burning like those of a wolf. "Then why do you not rise and follow me? Who is the strong warrior who falls down before me?" she chanted in maddening mockery. "Lie down and die in the snow with the other fools, Conan of the black hair. You cannot follow where I would lead." With an oath, the Cimmerian heaved himself up on his feet, his blue eyes blazing, his dark, scarred face contorted. Rage took his soul, but desire for the taunting figure before him hammered at his temples and drove his wild blood fiercely through his veins. Passion, fierce as a physical agony, flooded his whole being, so that earth and sky swam red to his dizzy gaze. In the madness that swept upon him, weariness and faintness were swept away. He spoke no words as he drove at her, fingers spread to grip her soft flesh. With a shriek of laughter, she leapt back and ran, laughing at him over her white shoulder. With a low growl, Conan followed. He had forgotten the fight, forgotten the mailed warriors who lay in their blood, forgotten Njord and the the reavers who had failed to reach the fight. He had thought only for the slender white shape which seemed to float rather than run before him. Oh no, man, Conan. No, Conan, don't do it. Everybody knows when you find a strangely beautiful person in the middle of nowhere, it's a trap. Out across the white, blinding plain, the chase led. The trampled red field fell out of sight behind him, but still Conan kept on with the silent tenacity of his race. His mailed feet broke through the frozen crust. He sank deep in the drifts and forged through them by sheer strength. But the girl danced across the snow light as a feather floating across a pool. Her naked feet barely left their imprint on the hoarfrost that overlaid the crust. What the hell is hoarfrost? Okay. In spite of the fire in his veins, the cold bit through the warrior's mail and fur-lined tunic, but the girl in her gossamer veil ran as lightly and as gaily as if she danced through the palm and rose gardens of Potain? On and on she led, and Conan followed. Black curses drooled through the Cimmerian's perched lips. The great veins in his temples swelled and throbbed, and his teeth gnashed. "You cannot escape me," he roared. "Lead me into a trap, and I'll pile the heads of your kinsmen at your feet. Hide from me, and I'll tear apart the mountains to find you. I'll follow you to hell." So it's not even like a I want to screw her kind of thing. It's more like a I want to kill her kind of thing. Her maddening laughter floated back to him, and foam flew from the barbarian's lips. Further and further into the waste she led him. The land changed, the wide plains gave way to low hills, marching upward in broken ranges. Far to the north he caught a glimpse of towering mountains, blue with the distance or white with the eternal snows. Above these mountains shone the flaring ray of the Borealis. They spread fan-wise into the sky, frosty blades of cold, flaming light, changing in color, growing and brightening. Above him the skies glowed and crackled, with strange lights and gleams. The snow shone weirdly, now frosty blue, now crimson, now cold silver. Through a shimmering ice realm of enchantment, Conan plunged doggedly onward in a crystalline maze where the only reality was the white body dancing across the glittery snow beyond his reach, ever beyond his reach. He did not wonder at the strangeness of it all. Well, you probably should, buddy. I've read the fairy tales. I know what's going to happen. Actually, I know I am very average looking. So if ever like a super handsome guy or a super handsome girl was trying to compliment me or trying to flirt with me, I'm immediately like, okay, what do you want? What are you selling? I know you're not after me because you like me. I know you're up after something. Above him the skies glowed and crackled with strange lights and gleams. The snow shone weirdly, now frosty blue, now icy crimson, now cold silver. Through a shimmering icy realm of enchantment, Conan plunged doggedly onward in a crystalline maze where the only reality was the white... Oh wait, I already read that paragraph. He did not wonder at the strangeness of it all. Not even when two gigantic figures rose up to bar his way. The scales of their mail were white with hoar frost. Their helmets and their axes were covered with ice. Snow sprinkled their locks and their beards. and their beards were spikes of icicles. Their eyes were cold as the lights that streamed above them. "Brothers!" cried the girl, dancing between them. "Look who follows! I brought you a man to slay. Take his heart, that we may lay it smoking on our father's board." Again, dude, Conan. The giants answered with roars like the grinding of icebergs on a frozen shore and heaved up their shining axes as the maddened Cimmerian hurled himself upon them. A frosty blade flashed before his eyes, blinding him with its brightness, and he gave back a terrible stroke that sheared through his foe's thigh. With a groan, the victim fell, and at the instant Conan was dashed into the snow, his left shoulder numb from the blow of the survivor, from which the Cimmerian's mail had barely saved his life. Conan saw the remaining giant looming high above him like a colossus carved of ice, etched against the gold-glowing sky. The axe fell to sink through the snow and deep into the frozen earth as Conan hurled himself aside and leaped to his feet. The giant roared and wrenched his axe free, but even as he did, Conan's sword sang down. The giant's knees bent, and he sank slowly into the snow, which turned crimson with the blood that gushed from his half-severed neck. Conan wheeled to see the girl standing a short distance away, staring at him in wide-eyed horror, all the mockery gone from her face. He cried out fiercely, and the blood drops flew from his sword as his hand shook in the intensity of his passion. "Call the rest of your brothers," he cried. "I'll give their hearts to the wolves. You cannot escape me." With a cry of fright, she turned and ran fleetingly. She did not laugh now, nor mock him over her white shoulder. She ran as for her life, and though he strained every nerve and threw until his temples were like to burst and the snow swam red to his gaze, she drew away from him, dwindling in the witch-fire of the skies, until she was a figure no bigger than a child, then a dancing white flame on the snow, then a dim blur in the distance. But grinding his teeth until the blood stared from his gums, he reeled on, and he saw the blur grow to a dancing white flame, and the flame to a figure big as a child. He saw the blur grow to a dancing white flame, and the flame to a figure big as a child. Wait, did I read that sentence again? No, I didn't. It's a very odd paragraph. And then she was running less than 100 paces ahead of him, and slowly the space narrowed foot by foot. She was running with effort now, her golden locks blowing free. He heard the quick panting of her breath and saw a flash of fear in the look she cast over her white shoulder. The grim endurance of the barbarian had served him well. The speed ebbed from her flashing white legs. She reeled in her gait, and his untamed soul leaped from up the fires of hell she had fanned so well. With an inhuman roar he closed in on her, just as she wheeled with a haunting cry and flung out her arms to fend him off. His sword fell into the snow as he crushed her to him. Her lithe body bent backwards as she fought with desperate frenzy in his iron arms. Her golden hair blew about his face, blinding him with its sheen. The feel of her slender body twisted into his mailed arms drove him to blinder madness. His strong fingers sank deep into her smooth flesh, and that flesh was as cold as ice. It was as if he embraced not a woman of human flesh and blood, but a woman of flaming ice. She writhed her golden head aside striving to avoid the fierce kisses that bruised her red lips. "You are as cold as the snows," he mumbled dazedly. "I will warm you with the fire of my own blood." With a scream and a desperate wrench, she slipped from his arms, leaving her single gossamer garment in his grasp. She sprang back and faced him, her golden locks in wild disarray, her white bosom heaving, her beautiful eyes blazing with terror. For an instant he stood frozen, awed by her terrible beauty as she posed naked against the snows. And in that instant she flung her arms towards the lights that glowed in the skies above her and cried out in a voice that rang in Conan's ears forever after, "Ymir, oh my father, save me!" Conan was leapt forward, arms spread to seize her, when, with a crack like the breaking of an ice mountain, the whole sky leaped into ice fire. The girl's ivory body was suddenly enveloped in a cold blue flame, so blindingly that the Cimmerian threw up his hands to shield his eyes from the intolerable blaze. A fleeting instant, skies and snowy hills were bathed in crackling white flames, blue darts of ice light, and frozen crimson fires. Then Conan staggered and cried out. The girl was gone. The glowing snow lay empty and bare. High above his head the witchlight flashed and played in a frosty sky gone mad, and among the distant blue mountains there sounded a rolling thunder as of a gigantic war chariot, rushed behind steeds whose frantic hoofs struck lightning from the snows and echoes from the skies. Then suddenly the borealis, the snow-clad hills and blazing heavens, reeled drunkenly to Conan's sight. Thousands of fireballs burst with showers of sparks, and the sky itself became a titanic wheel which rained stars as it spun. Under his feet the snowy hills heaved up like a wave, and the Cimmerian crumpled into the snow to lie motionless. In a cold, dark universe whose sun was extinguished eons ago, Conan felt the movement of life, alien and unguessed. An earthquake had him in its grip, and was shaking him to and fro, at the same time chafing his hands and feet until he yelled in pain and fury and groped for his sword. "He's coming to, Horsa," said a voice. "Haste, we must rub the frost out of his limbs if he's ever to wield sword again." "He won't open his left hand," growled another. "He's clutching something." Conan opened his eyes and stared into the bearded faces that bent over him. He was surrounded by tall, golden-haired warriors in mail and furs. "Conan, you live!" "By Crom, Njord," gasped the Cimmerian. "Am I alive, or are we all dead and in Valhalla?" "We live," grunted the Aesir, busy over Conan's half-frozen feet. "We had to fight our way through an ambush, or we had come up with you before the battle was joined. The corpses were scattered cold when we came upon the field. We did not find you among the dead, so we followed your spoor. In Ymir's name, Conan, why did you wander off into the wastes of the north? We have followed your tracks in the snow for hours. Had a blizzard come up and hidden them? We have never found you by Ymir." "Swear not so often by Ymir," uneasily muttered a warrior, glancing at the distant mountains. "This is his land, and the god bides among yonder mountains, the legend says." "I saw a woman," Conan answered hazily. "We met Bragi's men in the plains. I know not how long we fought. I alone lived. I was dizzy and faint. The land lay like a dream before me. Only now do all things seem natural and familiar. The woman came and taunted me. She was beautiful as a frozen flame from hell. A strange madness fell upon me when I looked at her, so I forgot all else in the world. I followed her. Did you not find her tracks, or the giants in icy mail I slew? Norrid shook his head. We found only your tracks in the snow, Conan. Then it may be I am mad, said Conan dazedly. Yet you yourself are no more real to me than was the golden-locked witch who fled naked across the snows before me. Yet from under my very hands she vanished like ice, and she vanished in icy flame. He is delirious, whispered a warrior. Yep. Not so, cried an older man, whose eyes were wild and weird. It was Atali, the daughter of Ymir, the frost giant. To fields of the dead she comes, and shows herself to the dying. Myself, when a boy, I saw her, when I lay half slain on the bloody field of Ulraven. Blech. I saw her walk among the dead in the snows, her naked body gleaming like ivory, and her golden hair unbearably bright in the moonlight. I lay and howled like a dying dog because I could not crawl after her. She lures men from stricken fields into the wasteland to be slain by her brothers, the ice giants, who lay men's red hearts smoking on Ymir's board. The Cimmerian has seen Atali, the frost giant's daughter. Bah! grunted Horsa. Old Grom's mind was touched in his youth by a sword cut on the head. Conan was delirious from the fury of the battle. Look how his helmet is dinted. Any of those blows might have addled his brain. It was all hallucination. He followed into the wastes. He is from the south. What does he know of Atali? You speak truth, maybe. You speak truth, perhaps, muttered Conan. It was all strange and weird. By Crom! He broke off, glaring at the object that still dangled from his clenched left fist. The others gaped silently at the veil he held up, a wisp of gossamer that was never spun by human distaff. So, okay, yeah. Initial correct. Yeah. So he was going by the power of horny this whole time. It's just he was also really, really angry that she was being kind of a dick. The power of horny is a very powerful force indeed. That was quite a short one. I'm lighting an incense right now. It's a black cherry scented incense. And it also gives me an excuse to light things on fire without getting arrested. Sounds like the next door kids are coming home. But we've been having a couple of cold days over here in Ohio, too. Like, getting down to the teens. How long is this one? 20 pages. And the Tower of Elephant. That one's going to be a big one. Ooh, that is a weird looking illustration. I don't want to go too long because I don't want to go over 2 hours. I think The God in the Bowl would be an okay next one. Gotta take a few drinks though. Of my beer. My boyfriend got me the variety pack from 3 Floyds because he was drinking some from my case last night. And this is his way of apologizing. And also because he likes me. But I have started reading some of the Savage Tales of Solomon Kane, and I find myself strangely liking them more than the comic books I read. I used to have the Dark Horse Omnibus of the Savage Tales of Solomon Kane, and I just could not get into it. I don't know why, but I just could not get into it, and at a certain point my eyes were kind of glazing over. But for some reason, I'm doing okay reading the actual stories, which I find very strange. So maybe it really is just me, and maybe I'm just being a weirdo. I don't know. Okay. Hold on. That's right. Did I read this poem? I think I did. The Samara poem. Because on top of stories, Robert D. Howard would sometimes, just write poetry about adventure and stuff like that. Kind of like those old, poetic bards way back when. Alright. Let's get back to it. The God in the Bowl. Aris the watchman grasped his crossbow with shaky hands, and he felt beads of clammy perspiration on his skin as he stared at the unlovely corpse sprawled on the polished floor before him. It is not pleasant to come upon death in a lonely place at midnight. Aris stood in a vast corridor, lighted by huge candles in niches along the walls. These walls were hung with black velvet tapestries, and between the tapestries hung shields and crossed weapons of fantastic make. Here and there, too, stood figures of curious gods, images carved of stone or rare wood, or cast of bronze, iron, or silver, dimly reflected in the gleaming black mahogany floor. Aris shuddered. He had never become used to the place, although he had worked there as watchman for some months. It was a fantastic establishment, the great museum and antique house which men called Callan Poplico's Temple, with its rarities from all over the world. And now, in the loneliness of midnight, Aris stood in the great silent hall and stared at the sprawling corpse that had been the rich and powerful owner of the temple. It entered even the dull brain of the watchman that the man looked strangely different now than when he rode along the Palin Way in his golden chariot, arrogant and dominant, with his dark eyes glinting with magnetic vitality. Men who had hated and feared Callan Poplico would scarcely have recognized him now, as he lay like a disintegrated ton of fat, his rich robe half torn from him, and his purple tunic awry. His face was blackened, his eyes almost starting from his head, and his tongue lolled backly from his gaping mouth. His fat hands were thrown out as in a gesture of curious futility. On the thick fingers gems glittered. "Why didn't they take his rings?" muttered the watchman uneasily. Then he started and glared, the short hairs prickling at the nape of his neck, through the dark silken hangings that masked one of the many doorways opening into the hallway came a figure. Aris saw a tall, powerfully built youth, naked but for a loincloth and sandals strapped high about his ankles. His skin was burned brown as by the suns of the wastelands, and Aris glanced nervously at his broad shoulders, massive chest, and heavy arms. A single look at the moody, broad-browed features told the watchman that the man was no Nemedian. From under a mop of unruly black hair smoldered a pair of dangerous blue eyes. A long sword hung in a leather scabbard at his girdle. Eris felt his skin crawl, and he fingered his crossbow tensely, for half a mind to drive a bolt through the stranger's body without parley, yet fearful of what might happen if he failed to inflict death at the first shot. The stranger looked at the body on the floor, more in curiosity than surprise. "Why did you kill him?" asked Eris nervously. The other shook his tousled head. "I didn't kill him," he answered, speaking Nemedian with a barbaric accent. "Who is he?" "Conan Publico," replied Eris, edging back. A flicker of interest showed in the moody blue eyes. "The owner of the house?" "Aye." Eris had edged his way to the wall, and now he took hold of a thick velvet rope which swung there, and jerked it violently. From the street outside sounded the stringent clang of the bell that hung before all shops and establishments to summon the watch. The stranger started. "Why did you do that?" he asked. "It will fetch the watchman." "I am the watchman, knave," answered Eris, bracing his rocking courage. "Stand where you are. Don't move, or I'll lose a bolt through you. Or I'll loose a bolt through you." His finger was on the trigger of his arbalist. The wicked square head of the quarrel leveled full on the other's broad breast. The stranger scowled, and his dark face was lowering. He showed no fear, but seemed to be hesitating in his mind as to whether he should obey the command or chance a sudden break of some kind. Eris licked his lips, and his blood turned cold as he plainly saw indecision struggle with a murderous intent in the foreigner's cloudy eyes. Then he heard a door crash open, and a medley of voices, and he drew a deep breath of amazed thankfulness. The stranger tensed and glared worriedly, like a startled hunting beast. "Conan, do something!" As half a dozen men entered the hall. All but one wore the scarlet tunic of the Nemalian police, were girt with stabbing swords and carried bills, long-shafted weapons, half pike, half axe. "Conan, say something!" "What devil's work is this?" exclaimed the foremost man, whose cold gray eyes and lean, keen features, no less than his civilian garments, set him apart from his burly companions. "By Mitra, Demetrio!" exclaimed Aris thankfully. "Fortune is assuredly with me tonight. I had no hope that the watch would answer the summons so swiftly, or that you would be with them." "I was making the rounds with Dionysus," answered Demetrio. "We were just passing the temple when the watch bell clanged. Who is this? Mitra, the master of the temple himself." "No other," replied Eris. "And foully murdered. It is my duty to walk about the building steadily all night, because, as you know, there is an immense amount of collectors of rarities. Conan Publico had rich patrons, scholars, princes, and wealthy collectors of rarities." "Oh, it's wealth stored here. Okay, I skipped a line there. Sorry." "Well, only a few minutes ago I tried the door which opens to the portico and found it to be only bolted. The door was provided with a bolt which works both from within or without, and a great lock which can be worked only from without. Only Conan Publico has a key to that, at the key which you see now hanging at his girdle. Naturally, my suspicion were roused, for Conan Publico always locks the door with the great lock when he closes the temple. And I had not seen him return since he left earlier in the evening for his villa in the eastern suburbs of the city. I have a key that works the bolt. I entered and found the body laying as you see. I have not touched it. So, Demetrius' keen eyes swept the somber stranger. And who is this? The murderer, without doubt, cried Eris. He came from that door yonder. He is a northern barbarian of some sort. A Hyperborean or Bosnian, perhaps. Who are you? Asked Demetrio. I am Conan, answered the barbarian. I am a Cimmerian. Did you kill this man? The Cimmerian shook his head. Answer me! Snapped the questioner. An angry glint rose in the moody blue eyes. I am no dog, he replied resentfully. Oh, an insolent fellow, sneered Demetrio's companion, a big man wearing an insignia of perfect of police. An independent cur, one of these citizens with rights, eh? I'll soon knock it out of him. Here you, come clean. Why did you murder? Just a minute, Dionys, ordered Demetrio curtly. Fellow, I am chief of the Inquisitorial Council of the city of Numalia. You had best tell me why you are here, and if you are not the murderer, prove it. Conan, say something! Oh my goodness. It's like, literally anything would help you in this situation now, dude. The Cimmerian hesitated. He was not afraid, but slightly bewildered, as a barbarian always is when confronted by the evidence of civilized networks and systems, the workings of which are so baffling and mysterious to him. I'm guessing this book is bouncing back and forth between King Conan to Warrior Conan to he's just doing his own thing Conan, so I don't think there's going to be like a consistent serial plot that goes from story to story with this one. The workings of which are so baffling and mysterious to him. While he's thinking it over, rapped Demetrio, turning to Aris, tell me, did you see Conan Publico leave the temple this evening? No. He's usually gone when I arrive to begin my sentry go, but the great door was bolted and locked. Could he have entered the building again without your having seen him? Why, it's possible, but hardly probable. The temple is large, and I walk clear around it in a few minutes. If he had returned from his villa, he would, of course, have come in his chariot, for it is a long way, and whoever heard of Conan Publico traveling otherwise? Even if I had been on the other side of the temple, I'd have heard the wheels of the chariot on the cobblestones, and I've heard no such thing, nor seen any chariots, except those which always pass along the streets just as at dusk. And the door was locked earlier in the night? I swear to it. I try all doors several times during the night. The door was locked on the outside until perhaps half an hour ago. That was the last time I tried it until I found it unlocked. You heard no cries or struggles? No, but that's not strange. The walls of the temple are so thick they're practically soundproof. An effect increased by the heavy hangings. Why go to all this trouble of questions and speculations, complained the burly perfect. It's much easier to beat a confession out of a suspect. Here's our man, no doubt about it. Let's take him to the court of justice. I'll get a statement if I have to smash his bones to a pulp. Demetrio looked at the barbarian. You understand what he said? Asked the Inquisitor. What have you to say? That any man who touches me will quickly be greeting his ancestors in hell, the Cimmerian ground between his powerful teeth, his eyes glinting quick flames of dangerous anger. Conan, you could have said anything else but that! Dude! Why did you come here if not to kill this man? Pursued Demetrio. I came to steal, sullenly answered the... Dude! To steal what? Rapped the Inquisitor. Food, the reply came after an instant's hesitation. That's a lie, snapped Demetrio. You knew there was no food here. Don't lie to me. Tell me the truth, or... The Cimmerian laid his hand on his sword hilt, and the gesture was as fraught with menace as the lifting of the tiger's lip to bare his fangs. You know, guys, I think Robert E. Howard really liked big cats. Save your bullying for the fools who fear you, he growled, blue fire smoldering in his eyes. I am no city-bred Numidian to cringe before your hired dogs. I've killed better men than you for less than this. Dionys, who had opened his mouth to bellow in wrath, closed it suddenly. The watchmen shifted their bills uncertainly and glanced at Demetrio for orders. They were struck speechless by hearing the all-powerful police thus bearded and expected a command to seize the barbarian. But Demetrio did not give it. He knew, if the others were too stupid to know, the steel-trapped muscles and blinding quickness of men raised beyond civilization's frontiers, where life was... Sorry, saw a notification. He knew if the others were too stupid to know, the steel-trapped muscles and blinding quickness of men raised beyond civilization's frontiers, where life was a continual battle for existence. He had no desire to lose the barbaric frenzy of the Cimmerian if it could be avoided. Besides, there was no doubt in his mind. I have not accused you of killing Killian, he snapped. But you must admit the appearances are against you. How did you enter the temple? I hid in the shadows of the watch house where it stands behind this building, Conan answered grudgingly. When this dog, jerking a thumb at Eris, passed by and rounded the corner, I ran quickly to the wall and scaled it. A lie, broke Eris. No man could climb that straight wall. Did you ever see a Cimmerian scale a sheer cliff? Asked Demetrio impatiently. I'm conducting this investigation. Go on, Conan. The corner is decorated with carvings, said the Cimmerian. It was easy to climb. I gained the roof before this dog came around the building again. I went across the roof until I came upon a trap door which was fastened with an iron bolt that went through it and was locked on the inside. I was forced to hew the bolt in twain with my sword. Eris, remembering the thickness of the bolt, gulped involuntarily and moved further back from the barbarian, who scowled abstractedly at him and continued. I feared the noise might wake somebody, but it was a chance I had to take. I passed through the trapdoor and came into an upper chamber. I didn't pause there, but came straight away to the stair. How did you know where the stair was? Snapped the Inquisitor. I know that only Killian's servants and his rich patrons were ever allowed in those upper rooms. The dog's stubbornness shadowed Conan's eyes, and he remained silent. What did you do after you reached the stair? Demanded Demetrio. I caped straight down it, muttered the Cimmerian. This line of questioning is actually kind of amusing. It led into the chamber beyond behind yonder curtained door. As I came down the stair, I heard the noise of a door being opened. When I looked through the hangings, I saw this dog standing over the dead man. Why did you come from your hiding place? It was dark when I saw the watchman outside the temple. When I saw him here, I thought he was a thief too. It was not until he jerked the watch bell rope and lifted his bow that I knew he was the watchman. But even so, persisted the Inquisitor, why did you reveal yourself? I thought perhaps he had come to steal what? The Cimmerian checked himself suddenly as if he had said too much. What had you come after yourself? Finished Demetrio. You have told me more than you intended. You came here with a definite purpose. You did not, by your own admission, tarry in the upper rooms where the richest goods are generally stored. You knew the plan of the building. You were sent here by someone who knows the temple well to steal some special thing. And to kill Caligan Publico, exclaimed Dionysus. By Mitra, we've hit it. Grab him, then. We'll have a confession before morning. With a heathen curse, Conan leapt back, whipping out his sword with a viciousness that made the keen blade hum. Back if you value your dog lives, he snarled, his blue eyes blazing. Because you dare to torture shopkeepers and strip and beat harlots to make them talk, don't think you can lay your fat paws on a hill, man. I'll take some of you to hell with me. Fumble with your bow, watchman. I'll burst your guts with my heel before this night's work is over. Wait, interposed Demetrio. Call your dogs off, Dionysus. I am not convinced that he is the murderer, you fool, he added in a whisper. Wait until we can summon more men, or trick him into laying down his sword. Demetrio did not wish to forgo the advantage of his civilized mind by allowing matters to change to a physical basis, where the wild beast ferocity of the barbarian might even balance the odds against him. Very well, grunted Dionysus grudgingly. Fall back, men, but keep an eye on him. Give me your sword, said Demetrio. Take it if you can, snarled Conan. Demetrio shrugged his shoulders. Very well, but don't try to escape. 4 men with crossbows watch the house on the outside. We always throw a cordon about a horse before we enter it. The barbarian lowered his blade, though he only slightly relaxed the tense watchfulness of his attitude. Demetrio turned again to the corpse. Strangled, he muttered. Why strangle him when a sword stroke is so much quicker and surer? These Cimmerians are a bloody race, born with a sword in their hand, as it were. I never heard of them killing a man in this manner. Perhaps to divert suspicion, muttered Dionysus. Possibly. He felt the body with experienced hands. Dead possibly half an hour, he muttered. If Conan tells the truth about when he entered the temple, he would hardly have had the time to commit the murder before Eris entered. But he may be lying. He might have broken in earlier. I climbed the wall after Eris made the last round, Conan growled. So you say, Demetrio brooded for a space over the dead man's throat, which had been literally crushed to a pulp of purple flesh. The head staggered awry on splintered vertebrae. Demetrio shook his head in doubt. Why should a murderer use a pellant cable apparently thicker than a man's arm? He muttered. And what terrible constriction was applied so to crush the man's heavy neck? He rose and walked to the nearest door opening into the corridor. Here is a bust knock from a stand near the doors, he said, and here the polished floor is scratched, and the hangings in the doorway are pulled awry, as if a clutching hand had grasped them, perhaps for support. Caligan Publico must have been attacked in that room. Perhaps he broke away from the assailant, or dragged the fellow with him as he fled. Anyway, he ran staggeredly out into the corridor, where the murderer must have followed and finished him. And if this heathen isn't the murderer, where is he? Demanded the prefect. I haven't exonerated the Cimmerian yet, snapped the Inquisitor, but we'll investigate that room. He halted and wheeled, listening. From the street that sounded a sudden rattle of chariot wheels, which approached rapidly when ceased abruptly. Dionysus, snapped the Inquisitor. Send 2 men to find that chariot. Bring the driver here. From the sound, said Eris, who was familiar with all the noises in the streets, I'd say that it stopped in front of Promero's house, just on the other side of the silk merchant's shop. Who is Promero? Killian Publico's chief clerk. Blech. Bring him here with the chariot driver, snapped Demetrio. We'll wait until they come before we examine that room. The 2 guardsmen clumped away. Demetrio still studied the body. Dionysus, Aris, and the remaining policemen watched Conan, who stood sword in hand like a bronze figure of brooding menace. Presently, sandaled feet re-echoed outside, and the 2 guardsmen entered with a strongly built, dark-skinned man in the helmet and tunic of a charioteer, with a whip in his hand, and a small, timid-looking individual, typical of that class which, risen from the ranks of artisans, supplies right-hand men for wealthy merchants and traders. This one recoiled with a cry from the sprawling bulk on the floor. Oh, I knew evil would come to this! You are Promero, the clerk, I suppose. And you? Inaro, Killian Publico's charioteer. You do not seem overly moved at the sight of this corpse, observed Demetrio. Why should I be moved? The dark eyes flashed. Someone has only done what I dared not, but longed to do. So, murmured the Inquisitor, are you a free man? Inaro's eyes were bitter as he drew aside his tunic, showing the brand of the debtor's slave on his shoulder. Did you know that your master was coming here tonight? No, I brought the chariot to the temple this evening for him as usual. He entered it, and I drove towards his villa. But before we came to the Palin Way, he ordered me to turn and drive him back. He seemed much agitated in his mind. And did you drive him back to the temple? No, he bade me stop at Promero's house, where he dismissed me, ordering me to return there for him shortly after midnight. What time was this? Shortly after dusk. The streets were almost deserted. What did you do then? I returned to the slave quarters, where I remained until it was time to return to Promero's house. I drove straight there, and your men seized me as I talked with Promero in his door. You have no idea why Killian went to Promero's house? He didn't speak of his business to his slaves. Demetrio turned to Promero. What do you know about this? Nothing, the clerk's teeth chattered as he spoke. Did Killian Publico come to your house as the charioteer says? Yes. How long did he stay? Only a few minutes, then left. Did he come from your house to the temple? I don't know. The clerk's voice was shrill with taut nerves. This is operating more like a police procedural than a Conan story. Interesting. Alright, why did he come to your house? To talk matters of business with me. You're lying, snapped Demetrio. Why did he come to your house? I don't know anything. Promero was growing hysterical. I had nothing to do with it. Make him talk, Dionysus, snapped Demetrio. Dionysus grunted and nodded to one of his men, who, grinning savagely, moved towards the 2 captives. Do you know who I am? He growled, thrusting his head forward and staring domineeringly at his shrinking prey. You're Posthumo, answered the charioteer sullenly. You gouged out a girl's eye in the court of justice because she wouldn't give you information incriminating her lover. Ooh, wow. Dude's... Wow. I always get what I go after, bellowed the guardsman, the veins in his thick neck swelling and his face growing purple as he seized the wretched clerk by the collar of his tunic, twisting it so the man was half strangled. Speak up, you rat, he growled. Answered the inquisitor. Oh, Mitra, mercy, screamed the wretch. I swear. Posthumo slapped him terrifically, first on one side of the face and then on the other, and continued the interrogation by flinging him to the floor and kicking him with vicarious accuracy. And Conan is just like standing there being like, what the hell is going on? I'm starting to think that Conan really was there just to steal some shit, and then he just ended up in this murder plot and has literally no idea what the heck is going on. So I'm starting to believe Conan's story now because he is like not saying anything. That's a good Kolsch. Alright. Mercy, moaned the victim. I'll tell anything. Then get up, you cur, roared Posthumo, swelling with self-importance. And don't lie there, whining. Dinas cast a quick glance at Conan to see if he were properly impressed. You see what happens to those who cross the police, he said. The Cimmerian spat with a sneer of cruel contempt for the moaning clerk. He's a weakling and a fool, he growled. Let one of you touch me, and I'll spill his guts on the floor. Are you ready to talk? Asked Demetrio tiredly. He found these scenes wearingly monotonous. All I know, sobbed the clerk, dragging himself to his feet and whimpering like a beaten dog in his pain, is that Killian came to my house shortly after I arrived. I left the temple at the same time he did and sent his chariot away. He threatened me with discharge if I ever spoke of it. I'm a poor man, without friends or favor. Without my position with him, I would starve. What's that to me? Snapped Demetrio. How long did he remain at your house? Until perhaps half an hour before midnight. Then he left, saying he was going to the temple and would return after he had done what he wished to do there. What was he going to do there? Primero hesitated at revealing the secrets of his dreaded employer. Then a shuddering glance from Posthumo, who was grinning evilly as he doubled his huge fist, opened his lips quickly. There is something in the temple he wished to examine. But why should he come here alone, and in so much secrecy? Because it was not his property. It arrived in a caravan from the south at dawn. The men on the caravan knew nothing of it, except that it had been placed with them by the man of the caravan from Stygia and was meant for Calathes of Hanmar, priest of Ibis. I probably pronounced that wrong too. The master of the caravan had been paid by these other men to deliver it directly to Calanthes, but he's a rascal by nature, and wished to proceed directly to Aquilnia, on the road to which Hanumar does not lie. So he asked if he might leave it in the temple until Calanthes could send for it. Killian agreed, and told him he himself would send a runner to inform Calanthes, but after the men had gone, I spoke of the runner. Killian forbade me to send him. He sat brooding over what the men had left. And what was that? A sort of sarcophagus, which, such as is found in ancient Stygian tombs, but this one was round, like a covered metal bowl. Its composition was something like copper, but much harder, and it was carved with hieroglyphics, like those found on the more ancient menhirs in southern Stygia. I know I'm mispronouncing quite a few of these names, guys. Sorry. The lid was made fast to the body by carven copper-like bands. What was in it? The men in the caravan did not know. They only said that the man who gave it to them told them that it was a priceless relic found among the tombs far beneath the pyramids and sent to Calanthes because of the love the slender bore the priest of Ebus. Because the love the slender bore the priest of Ebus. Gallian Bubligo believed that it contained the diadem of the giant kings of the people who dwelt in that dark land before the ancestors of Stygians came there. He showed me a design carved on the lid, which he swore was the shape of the diadem, which legend tells us the monster king wore. He determined to open the bowl to see what it contained. He was like a madman when he thought of the fabled diadem, which myths say was set with the strange jewels known only to that ancient race, a single one of which is worth more than all the jewels of the modern world. I warned him against it, but he stayed at my house, as I have said, and a short time before midnight he came alone to the temple, hiding in the shadows until the watchman had passed to the other side of the building, then letting himself in with his belt key. I watched him from the shadows of the silk shop, saw him enter the temple, and then returned to my own house. If the diadem was in the bowl, or anything else of great value, he intended hiding it somewhere in the temple and slipping out again. Then on the morrow he would raise a great hue and cry, saying that thieves have broken into his house and stolen Calanthes' property. None would know of his prowlings but the charioteer and I, and neither of us would betray him. But the watchman? Objected Demetrio. Gillian did not intend being seen by him. He planned to have him crucified as an accomplice of the thieves, answered Promero. Aris gulped and turned pale as this duplicity of his employer came home to him. Where is this sarcophagus? Asked Demetrio. Promero pointed, and the Inquisitor grunted. So, the very room in which Gillian must have been attacked. Promero turned pale and twisted his thin hands. Why should a man in Stygia send Calanthes a gift? Ancient gods and queer mummies have come up the caravan roads before, but who loves the priest of Ebus so well in Stygia, and where they still worship the archdemon Set, who coils among the tombs in the darkness? The god Ebus has fought Set since the first dawn of the earth, and Calanthes has fought Set's priests all his life. There is something dark and hidden here. Show us the sarcophagus, commanded Demetrio, and Promero hesitantly led the way. All followed, including Conan is still there. He's not even involved anymore. All right. who was apparently heedless of the wary eye of the guardsman, kept on him and seemed merely curious. They passed through the torn hangings and entered the room, which was rather more dimly lighted than the corridor. Doors on each side gave into other chambers, and the walls were lined with fantastic images, gods of strange lands and far peoples, and Primero cried out sharply, "Look! The bowl! It's open and empty!" In the center of the room stood a strange black cylinder, nearly 4 feet in height and perhaps 3 feet in diameter at its widest circumference, which was halfway between the top and bottom. The heavy caravan lid lay on the floor, and beside it a hammer and chisel. Demetrio looked inside, puzzled an instant over the dim hieroglyphics, and turned to Conan. "Is this what you came to steal?" The barbarian shook his head. "How could I bear it away? It is too big for one man to carry." "The bands were cut by this chisel," mused Demetrio, "and in haste there are marks where misstrokes of the hammer dented the metal. We may assume that Killian opened the bowl. Someone was hiding nearby, possibly in the hangings in the doorway. When Killian had the bowl open, the murderer sprang on him, or he might have killed Killian and opened the bowl himself." "This is a grisly thing," shuddered the clerk. "It's too ancient to be holy. Whoever saw metal like it in a sane world? It seems less destructible than Acolian steel. Yet see how it is corroded and eaten away in spots. Look at the bits of black mold clinging to in the grooves of the hieroglyphics. They smell as earth smells from far below the surface. And look, here on the lid." The clerk pointed with a shaky finger. "What would you say it is?" Demetrio bent closer to the caravan design. "I'd say it represents a crown of some sort," he grunted. "No," exclaimed Primero. "I warned Killian, but he would not believe me. It is a scaled serpent coil with its tail in its mouth. It is the sign of Set, the old serpent, the god of Stygians. This bowl is too old for a human world. It is a relic of the time when Set walked the earth in form of a man. The race which sprang from his loins laid the bones in their kings away in such cases as these, perhaps." "And you'll say that those moldering bones rose up and strangled Killian, Dulico, then walked away, perhaps?" derided Demetrio. "It was no man who laid to rest in that bowl," whispered the clerk, his eyes wide and staring. "What human could lie in it?" Demetrio swore disgustingly. "If Conan is not the murderer," he snapped, "the slayer is still somewhere in this building. Dinas and Aris, remain here with me, and you 3 prisoners stay here too. The rest of you search the house. The murderer could only have escaped if he gotten away before Aris found the body by the way Conan used in entering, and in that case the barbarian would have seen him if he's telling the truth." "I saw no one but this dog," growled Conan, indicating Aris. "Of course not, because you're the murderer, said Dinas. "We're wasting time, but we'll search the house as a formality, and if we find no one, I promise you shall burn. Remember the law, my black-haired savage. You go on the mines for killing a commoner, you hang for killing a tradesman, and for murdering a rich man, you burn." I love the illustrations in here. It's kind of a nice little variety going on. Kind of just Yeah, I don't think this is all the same artist. Oh, but... Yes, I get to light stuff on fire again. Yeah, this is kind of an interesting departure from typical Conan stories. It's kind of a police procedural. Ancient police procedural. Only a couple more pages left. I think after this story I'll be done. Conan answered with a wicked lift of his lip, baring his teeth, and the men began their search. The listeners in the chamber heard them stamping upstairs and down, moving objects, opening doors, and bellowing to one another through the rooms. Conan, said Demetrio, you know what it means if they find no one. I didn't kill him, snarled the Cimmerian. If he had sought to hinder me, I'd have split his skull, but I did not see him until I saw his corpse. I know that someone sent you here tonight, to steal at least, said Demetrio. By your silence, you incriminate yourself in this murder as well. You had best speak. The mere fact of your being here is sufficient to send you to the mines for 10 years, anyhow, whether you admit your guilt or not. But if you tell the whole tale, you may save yourself from the stake. Well, answered the barbarian grudgingly, I came here to steal the Zamorian diamond goblet. A man gave me a diagram of the temple and told me where to look for it. It is kept in that room, Conan pointed, in a niche in the floor under a copper Shemeshed god. He speaks truth there, said Primero. I thought that not half a dozen men in the world knew the secret of that hiding place. And if you had secured it, asked Dionysus sneeringly, would you really have taken it to the man who hired you, or would you have kept it for yourself? Again the smoldering eyes flashed resentment. I am no dog, the barbarian muttered. I keep my word. Who sent you here? Demetrio demanded, but Conan kept a sullen silence. The guardsmen were straggling back from their search. There is no man hiding in this house, they growled. We've ransacked the place. We've found the trap door in the roof through which the barbarian entered, and the bolt he cut in half. A man escaping that way would have been seen by the guards. We posted about the building, unless he fled before we came. Then, besides, he would have had to stack tables or chairs or cases upon each other to reach it from below. And that has not been done. Why couldn't he have gone out to the front door just before Aris came around the building? Because the door was bolted on the inside, and the only key which would work that bolt are the one belonging to Aris and the one which still hangs on the girdle of Callian Publico. I found the cable the murderer used, one of them announced. A black cable thicker than a man's arm, and curiously splotched. Then where is it, fool? Exclaimed Dionysus. In the chamber adjoining this one, answered the guard. It's wrapped about a marble pillar. There is no doubt the murderer thought it would be safe from detection. I couldn't reach it, but it must be the right one. He led the way into a room filled with marble statuary and pointed to a tall column, one of several which served a purpose more of ornament to set off the statues then of futility. Then he halted and stared. "It's gone!" he cried. "It never was there," snorted Dionysus. "By Mitra, it was," swore the guardsman. "Coiled around the pillar just above those carven leaves. It's so shadowy up there near the ceiling, I couldn't tell much about it, but it was there." "You're drunk," snapped Demetrius, turning away. "That's too high for a man to reach, and nothing but a snake could climb that smooth pillar." "A Cimmerian could," muttered one of the men. "Possibly. Say that Conan strangled Callian, tied the cable about the pillar, crossed the corridor, and hid in that room where the stair is. How then could he have removed it after you saw it? He has been among us ever since. Eris found the body." "No, I tell you, Conan didn't commit the murder. I believe the real murderer killed Callian to secure whatever was in the bowl, and is hiding now in some secret nook of the temple. If we can't find him, we'll have to put the blame on the barbarian to satisfy justice, but where is Promero?" They had returned to the silent body in the corridor. Dionysus bellowed threateningly for Promero, and the clerk came suddenly from the room in which stood the empty bowl. He was shaking and his face was white. "What now, man?" exclaimed Demetrio irritably. "I found a symbol on the bottom of the bowl," chattered Promero. "Not an ancient hieroglyph, but a symbol recently carved. The mark of Thothomon." "Oh, hey, Thothomon is back! Yay!" "The stinging sorcerer, Calisthes' deadly foe. He found it in some grisly cavern below the haunted pyramids. The gods of old times did not die as men died. They fell into long sleeps, and their worshippers locked them in sarcophagi so that no alien hand might break their slumber. Thothomon sent death to Calanthes. Callian's greed caused him to lose the horror, and it is lurking somewhere near us. Even now it may be creeping upon us." "You gibbering fool," roared Dionysus disgustingly, striking him heavily across the mouth. Dionysus was the materialist, with scant patience for eerie speculation. "Well, Demetrio," he said, turning to the Inquisitor, "I see nothing else to do than arrest this barbarian." The Cimmerian cried out suddenly, and they wheeled. He was glaring towards the door of a chamber that adjoined the room of statues. "Look!" he exclaimed. "I saw something move in that room. I saw it through the hangings. Something that crossed the floor like a long, dark shadow." "Bah!" snorted Posthumo. "We searched that room." "He saw something!" Romero's voice shrilled and crackled with hysterical excitement. "This place is a curse. Something came out from the sarcophagus and killed Callian Polico. It hid from you where no human could hide, and now it is in that room. Mitra, defend us from the power of darkness. I tell you, it was one of Set's children. And that grisly bowl." He caught Dionysus' sleeve with claw-like fingers. "You must search that room again." The Perfect shook him off disgustingly, and Posthumo was inspired into a flight of humor. "You shall search it yourself, clerk," he said, grasping Promero by the neck and girdle, and propelling the screaming wretch forcibly towards the door, outside of which he paused and hurled into the room so violently the clerk fell and lay half-stunned. "Enough of this," growled Dionysus, eyeing the silent Cimmerian. The Perfect lifted his hand. Conan's eyes began to burn bluely, and a tension crackled in the air. When an interruption came, a guardsman entered, dragging a slender, richly dressed figure. "I saw him slinking about the back of the temple," quoth the guard, looking for commendation. Instead, he received curses that lifted his hair. "Release that gentleman, you bungling fool," swore the Perfect. "Don't you know Astrius Pentenius, the nephew of the city's governor?" The masked guard fell away, and the foppish young nobleman brushed his embroidered sleeve fastidiously. "Save your apologies, good Dionysus," he lisped affectionately. "All in the line of duty, I know. I was returning from a late revel, and walking to rid my brain of the wine fumes. What have we here? By Mitra! Is it a murder?" "Murder it is, my lord," answered the prefect. "But we have a man who, though Demetrio seems to have doubts on the matter, will doubtless go to the stake for it." "A vicious-looking brute," murmured the young aristocrat. How can any doubt his guilt? I have never seen such a villainous contentious before." "Yes, you have, you scented dog," snarled the Cimmerian. "When you hired me to steal the Zamorian goblet for you. Revels, eh? Bah! You were waiting in the shadows for me to hand you the goblet. I would not have revealed your name if you had given me fair words. Now tell these dogs that you saw me climb the wall after the watchman made the last sound, so that they'll know I didn't have time to kill this fat swine before Aris entered and found the body." Demetria looked quickly at Astrius, who did not change color. "If what he says is true, my lord," said the Inquisitor, "it clears him of the murder, and we can easily hush up the matter of attempted theft. He is due 10 years at hard labor for housebreaking, but if you say the word, we'll arrange for him to escape, and none of us will ever know anything about it. I understand you won't be the first young nobleman who had to resort to such a thing to pay gambling debts and the like. You can rely on our discretion." Conan looked at the young noble expectantly, but Astrius shrugged his slender shoulders and covered a yarn with a delicate white hand. "I know him not," he answered. "He is mad to say I hired him. Let him take his just deserts. He has a strong back, and the toil in the mines will be well for him." Conan's eyes blazed, and he stared as if it stung. The guards tensed, grasping their bills, then relaxed as he dropped his head suddenly, as if in sullen resignation, and not even Demetrio could tell that he was watching them from under his heavy black brows, with eyes that were slits of blue bale fire. He struck with no more warning than a striking cobra. His sword flashed in the candlelight. Astrius shrieked, and his head flew from his shoulder in the shower of blood, the features frozen in a white mask of horror. Cat-like Conan wheeled and thrusted murderously for Demetrius' groin. The Inquisitor instinctively recoiled, barely deflecting the point which sank into his thigh, glancing from the bone and plowed out through the outer side of the leg. Demetrio went to his knee with a groan, unnerved and nauseated with agony. Wow, that went from 0 to 100 real quick. All right. We got like a page and a half left, so or 2 pages left. Sorry, cracking open another beer. Conan has not paused. The bill which Dionysus flung up saved the perfect skull from the whistling blade, which turned slightly as it cut through the shaft, and sheared his ear clean from his head. The blinding speed from the barbarian paralyzed the senses of the police and made their actions futile gestures. Caught flat-footed and dazed by his quickness and ferocity, half of them who would have been down before they had a chance to fight back, except that Posthumo, more by luck than skill, threw his arm about the Cimmerian, pinioning his sword arm. Conan's left hand leaped to the guard's head, and Postmo fell away and writhed shrieking on the floor, clutching a gaping red socket where an eye had been. Conan bounded... Just desserts for you. Conan bounded back from the waving bills, and his leap carried him outside the ring of his foes to where Aris stood fumbling at his crossbow. A savage kick in the belly dropped him, green-faced and gagging, and Conan's saddled heel crunched square into the watchman's mouth. The wretch screamed through a ruin of splintered teeth, blowing bloodily froth from his mangled lips. Then all were frozen in their tracks by the soul-shaking horror of a scream which rose from the chamber into which Posthumo had hurled Promero, and from the velvet-hung door the clerk came reeling and stood there, shaking with great silent sobs, tears running down his pasty face and dripping off his loose, sagging lips like an idiot babe weeping. All halted to stare at him. Conan with his dripping sword, the police with their lifted bills, Demetrio crouching on the floor and striving to staunch the blood that jetted from the great gash in his thigh. Dionysus clutching the bleeding stump of his severed ear, Aris weeping and splitting out fragments of boned teeth. Even Posthumo ceased his howls and blinking whimper through the bloody mist that veiled his half-sight. Promero came reeling out into the corridor and fell stiffly before them, screeching in an unbearable high-pitched laughter of madness. He cried shrilly, "The god has a long neck! Ha ha ha! Oh, a long, cursed, long neck!" And then, with a frightful convulsion, he stiffened and laid grinning vacantly at the shadowy ceiling. "He's dead," whispered Dionysus, oddly, forgetting his own hurt. Doubt it. And the barbarian who stood with his dripping sword so near him. He bent over the body, then straightened, his pig eyes flaring. "He's not wounded. In Mitra's name, what is in that chamber?" Then horror swept over them, and they ran screaming for the outer door, jammed there in a clawing, shrieking mob, and burst through like madmen. Aris followed, and the half-blind Posthumo struggled up and blundered blindly after his fellows, squealing like a wounded pig and begging them not to leave him behind. He fell among them, and they knocked him down and trampled him, screaming in their fear. But he clawed after them, and after him came Demetrio. The Inquisitor had the courage to face the unknown, but he was unnerved and wounded, and the sword that had struck him down was still near him. Grasping his blood-spurting thigh, he limped after his companions. Police, charioteer, and watchmen, wounded or whole, they burst screaming into the street, where the men watched the house, took panic, and joined in flight, not waiting to ask why. Conan stood in the great corridor alone, save for the corpses on the floor, standing there like, where the hell is everyone running? The barbarian shifted his grip on the sword and strode into the chamber. It was hung with rich silken tapestries. Silken cushions and couches lay strewn about in careless profusion, and over a heavily gilded screen a face looked at the Cimmerian. Conan stared in wonder at the cold, classic beauty of the countenance, who, like he had never seen among the sons of men. Neither weakness nor mercy, nor cruelty, nor kindness, nor any other human emotion was in those features. They might have been the marble mask of a god, carved by a master hand, except for the unmistakable life in them. Life cold and strange, such as the Cimmerian had never known and could not understand. He thought fleetingly of the marble perfection of the body which the screen concealed. It must be perfect, he thought, since the face was so inhumanly beautiful. But he could see only the godlike face, the finely molded head which swayed curiously from side to side. The full lips opened and spoke a single word in a rich, vibrant tone that was like the golden chimes that ring in the jungle lost temples of Kahitai. It was an unknown tongue, forgotten before the kingdoms of man arose, but Conan knew that it meant, "Come." And the Cimmerian came with a desperate leap and a humming slash of his sword. The beautiful head rolled from the top of the screen in a jet of dark blood and fell at his feet. He gave back, fearing to touch it. Then his skin crawled, for the screen shook and heaved with convulsions of something behind it. Conan had seen and heard men die by the scores, and had heard a human being make such a sound in the death throes. There was a thrashing, floundering sound, as if a great cable were being lashed violently about. At last the movement ceased, and Conan looked gingerly behind the screen. Then the full horror of it rushed over the Cimmerian, and he fled, nor did he slacken his headlong flight until the spurs of Numalia faded into the dawn behind him. The thought of Set was like a nightmare, and the children of Set who once ruled the earth and who now sleep in their nighted caravans far below the black pyramids. Behind that gilded screen there had been no human body, only the shimmering headless coils of a gigantic serpent. Conan took one look at that body and was like, nope. Alright, I think that'll be all for tonight, everyone. We got a good distance into this book. Yeah, I think I'll keep up with these stories. It's at least good practice for me to get talking. But they are fun stories. That one was a little... The Frost Giant's daughter was interesting, though the snake one was a little bit more boring than I imagined. I don't know. Anyways, I think that will be all for tonight. I believe this. Alright, if you enjoyed today's Slow Down Sunday, please give a like and comment if you want me to read anything different, and I'll see you all next week.